Welcome to another episode of the Anyone But Cam Fantasy Football Podcast. I am one of your hosts and one of your commissioners and one of your week one winners. My name is Frankie, and sitting across the internet from me, I guess internet or whatever phone waves. I don't know. I don't know if phone calls work. Either way, I'm joined here with Cam. Cam, how are you doing on this lovely Wednesday evening?
Gotta be honest with you. I don't know if last weekend, as far as football went, could have gone better for me. Lions won, obviously, Thursday night, so that took
Sure,
a big
sure.
load off. And then Calvin Ridley, the only person I really cared about on my team, did great, which is good. The Vikings lost to freaking Baker Mayfield. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
Uh, Basically all the other NFC teams that I was like, they could challenge the Lions to be, that tier two. All
right.
of them lost, besides the Packers, who only beat the Bears, who suck anyway. So, feeling good.
Yeah, can't relate when it comes to my
Yeah, that
NFL
was a
team.
rough game for. Oof.
Yeah, it's tough. Like, going, if you asked me like maybe a month ago, I was kind of like, oh, like I just don't see the path to like being a really good team this season. Like, I think we're can be fine and competitive like last year, but I don't see it. And then I made a mistake. I started to
You
buy into
bought
the
in?
hype. I bought.
Oh,
I started getting hopeful at least. I'm not to say that they can't turn it around, but like, I was gonna say that you can't imagine much of a worse start, but also the New York Giants exist. So,
no.
and
Yeah.
so it's just like, well, all right. I guess I can't imagine the worst start. But when it for how bad of a start it was for the Steelers, it was still a pretty bad start for my team in fantasy as well, but came out with a W. So we got winner's corner over here. Pretty exciting. Um,
Yeah. Taking down Logan in week one. What an accomplishment.
I that's what I'm saying. It's the vibes have shifted. Like things are different. It's probably not a good thing. The cosmic justice will come for me, I think. But yeah, we'll talk about that today. We'll talk about all the fun stuff from week one. We'll talk about the waiver additions from this morning. We'll talk about the matchups for week number two, and then we'll wrap it up. How's that sound to you, Cam?
Let's do this.
Let's do this. So, starting back with week one, the closest matchup by far was mine versus Logan's. It came down to just a couple carries from James Cook in that Monday night game, which is pretty exciting on my end. Also, very nerve wracking. A lot of just like checking my phone, watching the game. I had to drive somewhere quickly, so I'm basically asking Envy for updates, just like, so that was
Been
it
there.
fun. Yeah. And we got to that point because Joe Burrow played the worst game of his professional career, which is great. And then, Tyler Lockett went out with an injury. And it all just kind of unfolded from there. And then on Logan's side, Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown's stack was not nearly as explosive as he was hoping it would be. It was a very weird game against a stout, New England defense, but I don't think anyone saw it going as poorly as it did. Etienne had a good game with his touchdown run and 5 receptions. And then, yeah, nothing really else too special on his team. I mean, we saw good usage from Rashad White, which I guess is, promising for, or is encouraging at least for later down the line, but still only resulted in less than 6 points. I mean, his defense shelled out, but you knew but that's why he drafted them for. So, overall, a disappointing week for both me and Logan, and I just barely squeaked out on top.
Yeah, the irony that if Logan started Oregon State great Luke Musgrave at
Right.
tight end over the bum Kyle Pitts, he would have won by .02 points. Logan's got to be kicking himself for that. But
Yeah, that's crazy.
also, you said people, couldn't really see Jalen Hurts having a bad game, but your boy did say having the Eagles defense, if they go off, it means Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown probably aren't. And look what happened. Logan's just not metagaming like he should be.
Yeah, it's fair. And just like I was one thing, like his worst, Jalen Hurts' last worst game last season, he scored 16 points. So just like the 12 bomb is just like 16 points would have won in the week. Like, oh, that's tough.
Oh yeah.
That's tough. So that was my matchup. We had a
Wait, do we need to
blowout.
give Logan a little bit more attention just because it's Logan? He had a good kicker performance. Good for you, Logan. Getting Kyron Williams actually, looks pretty solid. 2 touchdowns.
Clutch.
Yeah. So, way to go, Logan. Maybe fill out your bench because it looks like you didn't have a full team. Oh, yeah, because you traded away Justin Tucker. So, you haven't reached the threshold where you didn't start a full roster, so we're not going to talk about you. But already not off to a great start, not having a fully filled up bench. So, got my eyes on you.
We need to see some depth here, Logan. All right, for a guy who wants our injuries and our bad in league to be put up to 100, and trying to figure out how to make things work with less talented guys. I mean, come on, you gotta fill out that bench.
Yeah, and keeping Devin Achane, who was a healthy scratch, like, what's the point?
Yeah, I'll say I do have Devon Achane in 2 of my 3 leagues, so I can't speak for that. All right, so next on my screen here, we do have a bit of a blowout win for JP versus Lassie here, with a good performance from Jay Herbs in that really exciting game against Miami. And then not a lot of like super exciting stuff for the rest of his starters. A good game for Derrick Henry, but nothing to write home about. Decent but below average game for Dalvin Cook. We know how things went in Cleveland for that Bengals team. And Jamar Nuke had a good game for his standards nowadays. And Njoku kind of disappointed. But he did come in clutch with some of his flex options here. DK Metcalf making the most of his few targets. And then Mike Evans, who, dropped a couple passes here and there, still came out with a good game with the touchdown there. So overall, pretty good performances. I would be remiss if we did not mention the MVP of his team by far, though, this week, the Dallas Cowboys defense, coming in with 38 points in our format. That is an absurd amount of points for any position. A defense, that's crazy.
Yeah, that game was over before halftime. It was awesome. And if you'll remember back to the draft, JP drafted 2 defenses, both the Cowboys and the Steelers. And the Cowboys were the 5th defense taken in our draft. Still 10th round, so he spent up for him, but 4 rounds later than Logan taking the Eagles in the 6th. So good value there for Jake.
Great value. And then on the Lassie side, you wouldn't think that Dallas won by 40 points with the performance that Dak Prescott gave you, with less than 6.5 fantasy points, but that is what happened. Nothing too crazy with his running backs, just like underperformance games overall. Justin Jefferson, of course, doing his thing, nearly 20 fantasy points without even a touchdown. It's just who he is. And look at that, Olave, who we all kind of touted as a really big player to target this season, shells out in his first game with 8 receptions. Wow, for 112 yards, 15 points. Disappointing performances from Christian Kirk and George Kittle, and underperformance from Pickens as well. So I didn't even realize he had a good week from his defense. Washington, wow. That makes sense. Overall, just I think Lassie had a decent week. If he had like a more standard quarterback performance out of Dak, he would have won most games this week against our league. So he just happened to go up against the Cowboys defense, and not much you can do about that.
Yeah, and Lassie's the one who drafted Jonathan Taylor, so pretty decent scoring considering he's missing his 3rd-round pick. Miles Sanders, a little encouraging, the amount of carries, but no touchdowns and a fumble loss is a bummer. Yeah, just carried by his top 2 wide receivers. All the other ones probably should be looking at the waiver wire. uh, which we'll allude to that later. But yeah, decent week, Lassie. You get it next
Decent
time.
week. Next up on my screen here, we have a decent game between Daniel and Justin. Daniel, who gets a good performance out of Mahomes, 19.5 points, gets a good game out of Devonta Smith, and then gets an absolutely banger of a game out of, Jacoby Myers with 2 touchdowns and 81 yards and 9 receptions. Excellent game there. 14 points out of the SF defense as well, which is really strong. Underperformance there for sure by Barkley. 1 carry and 1 reception for Swift. Can't say I didn't call it. And then just kind of, week one, the theme we're going to be hearing a lot is there's a lot of underperformances just across the league. It wasn't it was a very low scoring week NFL points wise and fantasy wise. So not much great coming from Amari Cooper in a really bad weather game. Waller couldn't get much going, and neither did Quentin Johnson at all. So a decent week from Daniel here. Nothing too crazy that really pushed him ahead. Besides for that Jacoby Myers performance with the 2 touchdowns. And then on the Justin side, really poor week from Lamar, poor week from Najee. Was really what did him in, it looks like to me. His kicker flex was bad, combining for less than 10 points. And then let's see, Stephon Diggs had a good game. That's really about it. I mean, I know James Conner got a lot of usage in his game, but it didn't really translate to a lot of points this week. CD didn't get much. Decent week, just nothing crazy. Really just only a stand-up performance by Stephon Diggs is just not going to be enough to pull you to a win in most weeks.
Yeah, Justin does have some decent long-term prospects, though. Josh Kelly looks like a solid flex running back who could pop off if anything happens to him. And then Michael Pittman, 8 catches on 11 targets to get nearly 20 fantasy points. That's a solid late round get for Justin, who definitely could use it. Tough loss, but I think he's got solid pieces to build a good team.
Yeah, he definitely does. Like the Michael Pittman one, that was like one of the most surprising performances to me from week 1. Definitely good news for him if that kind of usage continues here. All right. Next up here on my screen, we got a game between Greg and Dylan. Greg putting up the best performance of the week at 135 points, which was really brought on by his San Francisco stack in Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk. He also had really good performances from both of his kickers, actually, in Jake Elliott and Tyler Bass, and a decent week from his defense. And then, a really, really encouraging week for Zay Flowers as well. So as the rookie sees 10 targets, I really thought Rashad Bateman was going to have more of a role in week 1, but apparently it's just the Zay Flowers show. Yeah, apparently it's just the Zay Flowers show. So Josh Allen had a poor game. Obviously, the biggest thing to take away from Greg's team, aside for just really good performances all around, is losing J.K. Dobbins. I mean, that's rough. Looking at his running back depth, it looks like he's got Akers up next, then Spears, and that's it. Is that it? That sucks.
That's it.
Yeah. It's funny, like I think I mentioned in the last podcast, but I'm in a similar spot where in a different league, I drafted both Dobbins and Akers, and I'm like, wow, I feel like crap in this league now after both those weekend performances. And I can't imagine Greg's feeling too good, even though he does have a lot of really good pieces with McCaffrey, Josh Allen most weeks, and Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, I'd say Greg has probably the highest highs and lowest lows coming out of week 1. With Ayuk, probably one of the most Ayuk and Flowers, probably the 2 most exciting kind of these people could be high performing players for the rest of the season performances. And then Dobbins, it's brutal. He looked solid before he left. And Cam Akers, who had 22 carries and a touchdown and still didn't rank within the top how many running backs? He's currently the running back 26 after getting
Yikes.
22 carries and a touchdown in week 1.
A nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah, not great. Okay, so on the Dylan side here, good week from Cousins, decent week from Chubb. Madison, I'm not gonna harp on it again. I think one of the big things for Dylan in terms of his biggest lows for the week is definitely going to be the Aaron Rodgers injury and the kind of impact that's going to have on Garrett Wilson. Interesting to see what the Jets do in the coming weeks in terms of that, but not great. Still put in a good week, but without that touchdown, it would have been a nothing burger. Keenan Allen with a fine week. Jahmyr Gibbs, we all know that story. Encouraging performance from Courtland Sutton, I guess. And Jake Moody did really well against the Steelers, so that was good. If I'm Dylan, I'm excited about Anthony Richardson having that great performance in week 1. And then I know that Brees is still like working his way back and he's limited at practice again, but oh my God, like we all know that 2022 Brees Hall breaks that run for a touchdown, but 2023 Brees Hall is still looking pretty fine.
Yeah, Dylan's team definitely went in on the Jets, so this is easily the most devastated Dylan's ever been for an Aaron Rodgers injury.
Right.
Probably a little conflicted, but now he's gonna kill himself if Wilson is Garrett Wilson's quarterback. So there's some numbers to call Dylan if you need help. But overall, I think there's a lot of promising stuff. Nick Chubb, of course, got a lot of passes finally, so that's pretty solid. Keenan Allen looks like the alpha in that Chargers receiving core, and then. Yeah, Richardson looks great. Brees Hall looks like he's back. And Jordan Addison, solid performance, especially for a first game for a rookie. And I'm sure Dylan, is just salivating over thinking that the Vikings got another super talented wide receiver. We'll see how it plays out. But
yeah, absolutely.
Pretty solid.
Solid
just,
week.
Got to get some actual wins there, Dylan. Can't keep stacking losses like that.
Stacking losses. All right. So talking about stacking losses, let's talk about the stacking losses. Let's talk about the next team in his matchup, and the loser of this renamed themselves to Tank for Caleb. We have Cam, you versus Tyler. And so, of course, you came away with a win, 112 points nearly. Good performances from Bijan and Tony Pollard. Of course, Calvin Ridley popped off, and I have him in another league, so we're both excited about that. Not a whole ton else great stuff. I mean, McManus had a fine game. Jacksonville Jags did more than what you could have hoped for with the defense. I'm definitely would be excited about what you got on your bench, though. Maybe we live in a world where you can start both Bijan and Tyler Algier. That's crazy, but hey, it's Arthur Smith we're talking about here. And then Puka Nacua, obviously with 15 targets in that like Cooper Kupp plus role, that's just absurd. So maybe not the most what you would hope for out of like Treylon Burks, and of course not from Goddard either. And then Bateman, we talked about that already. But I definitely would be very encouraged by some of the things you saw on your bench players.
Yeah, story of my team is my top 3 picks all look how I was hoping. Bijan, maybe, you hope he's more of an alpha in that backfield, but he looked fantastic. And then Tony Pollard and Calvin Ridley look like bona fide, running back and wide receiver ones. So I'm happy with that. And then, like, my next 6 picks are all just sad and disappointing. But then, yeah, Puka Nacua and Tyler Algier. Jake, Logan, and I were watching Red Zone together at the afternoon games. And, dude, every time Matthew Stafford had passed Puka, or at least when it started, he was like, who is this guy? I got to go pick him up. And I was like, well, wouldn't you know it? He's on my bench. And I'm sure you can imagine how annoyed Jake was at me saying that. Yeah. And every time he caught a pass after that, I was like, Puka. So, yeah, that's really encouraging. And if Christian Watson pans out, I feel great. But if not, then I got a lot of just mid on my team after the stars. That's not great.
Yeah. Speaking of Puka, it's interesting. Like, I was thinking about picking him up in a different league, and I just thought I forget who it was. I think it went like semi-viral on fantasy football Twitter, but it was like, so this guy tweeted, if you have any enthusiasm for any Rams receivers besides for Cooper Kupp, like you're truly lost or something. And like that guy's just getting lit up in the quote retweets, and I'm like, dang it, I fell for that. I believed him.
Yeah, I had a draft podcast I listened to where the guy was like, I'm a bet that Puka is wide receiver 2 by the end of the season. And I was like, you know what? I'll just trust Kyle Krabs. Pick him up. See what happens. And
there you
shout
go.
out to that.
Shout outs. I'm sure they'll hear this. Cool. So next up, so on the other side, of course, we have Tyler, who had a rough week. Underperformances from Josh Jacobs, Damian Pierce, McLaurin, and Debo, and Schultz, and JSN. And the list just kind of goes on and on. Not a ton to be excited about. Trevor Lawrence looked good. He had some really, really good passes in this game. Pacheco was fine. But you kind of have to look into his bench to get excited with Brian Robinson, who looked actually quite good this week. Darnell Mooney, that touchdown, which would have been nice to cash in on. Sam Laporta, I think, looked really good for a tight end, for a rookie tight end especially. So I don't know. Nothing. It's just a down week. Tank for Caleb kind of sums it up.
Look, I think what really was the mistake in Tyler's draft is he has a lot of good players on bad offenses. Like the Raiders were fine, but like not 17 points isn't going to do great for a team. And then Damian Pierce is on Houston, Terry McLaurin's on Washington, Dalton Schultz is on Houston again. And then you get Pacheco, who's not the focal point of Kansas City, but he's fine. And then Debo's good. Just it was an Ayuk week. I feel like Debo's definitely a bounce back. He was the scariest
For
part
sure.
when I was, watching these games.
Yeah, it's a good point. And, you look at the rest of his bench too. You got Donovan Peoples-Jones in Cleveland, and which could be
Brian
better this
Robinson,
year. Who knows?
Darnell Mooney.
It's just not great. All right. Well, hopefully we can find a way to bounce back from the Cooper Kupp of it all. But
I totally
we'll
forgot.
see.
Yeah, rip.
Yeah. All right. Last game of the week was Jake versus Devin. So Jake, of course, the story is just the Dolphins stack, which didn't even fully cash out because Waddle didn't have an amazing game. Did he leave the game early? He must have left the game early.
I think he left a little bit, but then came back.
Says he only had a 64% on snaps, so that implies to me that he missed a decent amount of time. I was watching it on Red Zone, so I didn't quite catch it all. But of course, Tyreek and Tua, that's just the story of the week for Jake. AJ Dillon and Zeke. He did a 0 RB, and he's starting back up running backs, and it's tough, but that's the life he chose. Speaking of the life he chose, T. Higgins, 0 for 8. That
dude, I did not
is
know he had
absurd.
8 targets.
Oh yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Well, I've been in different leagues, so I knew.
Dude, he was dropped in our work league.
That's crazy. So not great there. Of course, we all know about 0 for 1 for Drake London. And then his defense and kicker didn't do anything for him either. He did have Gus Edwards, which I guess gets an uptick in the wake of the injury, but even then, whatever. Romeo Doubs probably had his best game of the season with the 2 touchdowns already, and he's on his bench. I don't know. It's he won with a below average score, and you got to be hopeful of that. But if of course he's going to get more out of T. Higgins. He's going to get probably more out of Drake London. Probably more. I don't know. But yeah, he's going to need to hit that Dolphins stack a lot. It seems like to be staying competitive every week.
Yeah, dude. The theory behind 0 running back is that you just stack wide receivers, and they score more points in those middle rounds than the running backs do. But if you draft just all the receiver busts, like T. Higgins, Drake London, who were probably two of the most disappointing wide receivers week one.
Right.
Deontay Johnson, who's now hurt,
Right.
and no other real wide receivers besides Romeo Dubs.
Yeah.
Dude, he has nothing besides the Tua Tyreek stack. Oh my god, I did not
Yeah.
realize what was going on his bench. But when I was watching the game with Jake, he the whole time was like, "I'm done for. This is over." I was like, "Dude, you still got the Tua stack. You're fine." And even like before the game was over, he still thought it was over for him because Devin still had the Giants kicker. I think maybe nope, that was all he had left. Oh wait, and Daniel Jones. Yeah, so he was still worried about Devin being able to score some points. But that last Tua Tyreek touchdown finally gave him some confidence. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and I think of Jake too. I'm pretty disappointed in Charbonnet's usage. Like that was probably supposed to be a big part of. I mean, and that can develop later in the season, of course. That kind of stuff usually takes some time, but you like to see more than 3 carries for 11 yards. I don't know. All right.
Yeah.
So then on the other side, of course, we had Devin, who failed to score 67 points this week. Obviously, we talked about Daniel Jones and Graham Gano, and we know how that went. Fine game. I mean, good game out of David Montgomery, getting the usage that you talked about as an insider Lions fan. 21 carries. Not the most efficient, but hey, that's volume. And then
It's better than Cam Akers. That's all I want to say.
Joe Mixon and a terrible game script. Devontae Adams, and I feel like I didn't see that game at all pop up on Red Zone.
It was basically just the Jacoby Myers show. That's all that really happened.
DJ Moore, who got 2 targets, both in the same drive, and it kind of seemed like that was the point where it's like, oh yeah, here comes DJ Moore. He's going to take over the game, and then he ended at 2 for 25 yards.
Dude,
that was crazy.
do you have any idea who JT O'Sullivan is on Twitter?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, he put out an hour-long video on Justin Fields and the Bears offense. And I drafted Justin Fields. I'm kind of interested in this stuff, so I watched it. It was the most just brain-dead stuff going on out there I've ever seen. It was so fun to watch. Like, they ran one play that was like a deep corner stop to Cole Kmet, where he had like beat a cornerback with agility, and he was like, "What are we doing here? Who thought this would work? Was this just a tight end coach who was like, dude, I have this brilliant play. Why are we doing this?" And yeah, it was great.
I'll check that out on Steelers Twitter this week. There was a play where we ran. I think it was in the second or third quarter, where I think we were on like the San Francisco, like 20 or 25, something like that, like right outside the red zone, I think, and we ran verticals. we were on like between the 20 and the 15. We ran 4 verts. It's just against 2 high safeties. Against 2 high safeties? What are we talking about?
All I saw Steelers related on Twitter was like, "Why did we buy into the hype? Don't we remember Matt Canada is there?" I was like, "Yep, yes he is."
Yeah, it was tough too because like some of it was definitely on Kenny, right? Like he just had bad missed throws, but the offense is so uninspired. It's so boring. Anyways, we can talk about that for a while. Speaking of boring, Pat Fryermuth only caught 1 pass, although it was the 1 touchdown for the game, so that was cool. Eckler had a great game. I see that he popped up on the injury report. I feel like he missed time as well, which is why we saw whoever is back up. What is it? Joshua Kelly? Yeah. Come in for a lot of the game. So hopefully he gets better on that. He started Judy, who didn't even play the game. So
I'd like to give Devin a little bit of leeway because he is in Singapore right now. But yeah, that is a miss.
Yeah, ultimately it wouldn't have mattered for anyone else to put in that position from his bench. So overall, that's a tough week.
If I have one thing positive to say to Devin, it's that I saw a clip from the Lions Twitter account today where they asked everyone what their favorite video game was for National Video Game Day, and David Montgomery said Uncharted. So, good choice, Devin.
That's yeah. We got to bump him up in our rankings. That's good.
Yeah,
We should ask him how he feels about the movie. That's the real question.
probably had a great time.
All right. So that was our very long recap of week one. We'll talk about the waivers real quick because it's pretty fun for week one. So Kendrick Bourne was the highest ticketed item, went for $37 to Devin. And then you came away with a $1 bid above Greg for Justice Hill, someone that I definitely didn't forget to put a bid on.
Dude, and Greg lost J.K. Dobbins, so he throws down $30 on the backup, and I'm just like, psych. Let me put down 31, which I did this morning because I saw something on Twitter. It was like, someone like, I wonder if I got Justice Hill. And I was like, all right, fine, I'll put a bid in. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I feel like if I'm Greg, I'm definitely putting it more than $30, but each of their own.
Yeah.
Jake Ferguson to Dylan, Rashid to Shahid to Cam. You had a. Did you catch the clip of Derek Carr telling him that he was gonna basically like win the game by throwing to him?
Yeah, just run. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was sick. A couple other depth adds here. Anything else on the waivers for you?
Dude, Dylan dropping Noah Gray to spend $13 on Jake Ferguson is just the absolute most Dylan move I can think of.
Yeah, that's a living the stream type of ad right there.
Yeah.
All right, and so I think that's it for the waivers. So let's talk just really quickly about kind of what we're looking forward to week two. I kind of forgot to look at the games in advance, but Cam, on the spot here, did you have a game of the week candidate?
No, so actually, I looked at this a little bit. Every single game is between a 1-0 team and an 0-1 team.
Whoa.
There are no undefeated matchups.
Well, that's good to know. That's good. It's going to be a high flying occasion. Well, geez. That sounds like
I think the one to pick then is Daniel versus Dylan, because at least Dylan had a decently high score last week, and then Daniel got the win over Justin. Daniel right now, and Daniel has DeAndre Swift and Devonta Smith playing against Minnesota, so that's pretty dope for Daniel, because I guess Daniel actually is a Minnesota fan too, so it's not double dunking on Dylan if they go off. It's also dunking on himself. But that's solid. And then Dylan on the other side with his Jets players are playing against Dallas. And dude, Dylan's gonna start primetime Kirk against Philly right now. I'm excited for this one actually.
Yeah, I think that's a fair enough. I think we'll go ahead and call the match for the week. I'm telling you, Dylan, Anthony Richardson's calling your name. Leave it at
that. And Dylan's benching Alexander Madison, his boy. Wow.
Benching K-Herbs too for Breeze. That's like a little bit of a choice.
I'm fine with that. I feel like Brees offers a lot more upside.
Against the Dallas D, though? I don't know.
That's a fair point. That is a fair point. Did you watch the Manning cast at all?
No, I did not get. I didn't get to catch most of the game.
Peyton Manning was just begging the Jets not to throw as soon as Zach Wilson was in. Like
I did see the clip of him talking about how he didn't have anything prepped for
passes.
him. Yeah.
Okay. But Daniel, you got to get out Quentin Johnston, dude. He's not even playing as the wide receiver 3 right now. Like, you have a second kicker flex before doing that. Especially if Jacoby Myers, who is in the concussion protocol, can't play. You're going to need to do some stuff with your roster, my man. Start Raheem Mostert, for the love of God. He's a starting running back for the Dolphins.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw he missed practice today, so I feel like if he practices tomorrow, that's just like an automatic decision.
Yeah. So I think it would be awesome if Dylan starts 0-2, just because he's Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Lay Mickinen as it is. And Daniel, deserves a 2-0 start after a rough season last year. And I think there's just a lot of interesting matchups going on with the Jets and Dallas, and Daniel with his Eagles against Minnesota. Should get some good stuff on Thursday night from them. I'm excited.
It should be. All right, let's pick it. I am picking Daniel to win. I'm predicting a 125 performance to a 96 performance from Dylan.
Dude, when you said 125, I was like, dang, that's high. But then also I saw Saquon Barkley's going up against Arizona. The Giants. Oh, and Darren Waller.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh. All right, if Daniel fixes his lineup a little bit, then I'll drop him down to 115, but Dylan's not breaking 80.
Yeah. My prediction for Daniel is contingent on not starting Quentin Johnston. I want to put that on the record. But all right. Well, I think that's about it then. Yeah.
I got nothing else important.
All right.
Wait, actually, the one thing I noticed but I didn't point out, last week's second lowest score was Tyler against me, and the lowest score was Devin. So the two bottom two scores were both alphas. And look, fellas, we got to bump those numbers up. We got to represent, all right?
It's true. Alrighty. Thank y'all for listening to the episode of the Amber Campus World Podcast. I have been Frankie.
And I am 1-0, and my name is Cam.
And we will catch you all on the next one.
Peace.